For decades, politics in Malaysia has been seen through the prism of race. It's a political formula which has been firmly embedded into Malaysia's political structure. Today, this race-based formula has come under threat by a coalition of opposition parties, which advocates the rights of all, irrespective of race. Does race-based politics have a place in the new political landscape of Malaysia? And how will it affect the outcome of the upcoming general election? The day of reckoning is drawing closer. For the ruling Barisan Nasional or BN coalition, it's a chance to turn the tide. For the opposition's Pakatan Rakyat, an opportunity to consolidate its gains. But Malaysia's 13th general election is more than just a watershed event, but rather a long-awaited sequel to the political tsunami of March 2008. Then, the ruling BN government not only lost 5 of the country's 12 states, but more significantly, its customary two-thirds majority in parliament. The 2008 drubbing of the ruling BN is openly acknowledged by stalwarts in UMNO. Mr. Abdullah Ahmad is a long-standing UMNO member. Looking back, he pulls no punches in attributing what went wrong in BN's performance in the last election under the leadership of then Prime Minister Abdullah Badawi.
The reason is simply we have an inept leadership then. He was foolishly overconfident and badly advised. He was surrounded by inexperienced people. They didn't know what was happening on the ground. That he thought he would be okay with the Malays. The shift for the Chinese and the Indian were obvious. The shift, the changes were obvious. But the Malays are more subtle.
40-year-old Jesse George, for example, is among a growing number of Malaysians who've become disillusioned with the continuation of the race policies in Malaysia. He feels that the time has now come for the country to review and eradicate the policies which have polarized many Malaysians.
I always believe race-based politics and religion-based politics is obsolete. It has no place for the future of Malaysia. For 50 over years, the Barisan Nasional have been trying to represent all the 3 different major races in Peninsula and the minority races in Sabah and Sarawak. They have failed because we still see the problems since the beginning of the birth of this country up to now. Is very little that has been solved. In fact, the division between the race have gotten even worse.
Saifuddin Abdullah calls himself a small new player within his party. He's seen as progressive and something of a lone reformist within a sea of conservative UMNO voices. A rising star in Malaysian politics, he was elected to Parliament in 2008 and appointed as Deputy Minister of Higher Education the same year. He appears fully cognizant of a new middle ground, which are made up of not only the minorities who seek equal rights, but progressive Malays who wish to achieve success without handouts.
I have met many young Malays who are telling me that, look, we want to be able to strive for ourselves. We are able to do business and to be entrepreneurs. We need to listen more, and we need to empower them. And the same thing with the non-Malays. Yeah, they are coming out and asking us to be more fair in many ways. Even in areas like education.
Successive Malaysian administrations have never made a secret of what many describe as race-based politics. The 1957 Constitution guarantees the special position of the Malays and other indigenous people as Bumiputras, or sons of the soil. And since 1971, the new economic policy, or NEP, was launched in the wake of the 1969 racial riots to carve out a significant share of the economy for the Bumiputras through affirmative action. Although the NEP officially ended in 1990, the de facto special position of the Malays remains non-negotiable.
Until they feel that they have achieved economic parity with the non-Malays, especially with the Chinese, they will be there. Even if Pakatan wins, they're not going to dismantle it. It's political realism. They thought now because to win over the Chinese.
There is still a very deep sense of unhappiness with race-based policies, unfairness, affirmative action, not only for those who are deserving, particularly we argue today, deserving Bumiputras, but the most undeserving Bumiputras also get scholarships and so on. So that has been continuous, continuous resentment that has been present among the Chinese and continues to be very important.
It's this unhappiness that the opposition has been quick to capitalize on. Campaigning on a platform of change, it has deliberately steered clear of championing the Malay cause. Instead, it's been focusing on more all-inclusive social welfare policies. Rafizi Ramli is a former government Petronas scholar and a beneficiary of BN rule. The irony is, he is now a rising voice within the opposition.
If you talk to people on the streets, of course, I think some sections of the Chinese or Indian communities would actually argue from the race-based perspective that in spite of 30 years worth of affirmative action for the Malays, nothing has changed much.
This is, of course, an opportune moment for Malaysians now to have to determine the new political landscape, which is now the contention based on policies and to view the new Malaysian spirit instead of talking primarily based on the survival of each race, minority ethnic Chinese or Indians or the majority Malays and Bumiputras.
Malaysia has had a myriad of political parties, but real power has, for half a century, been residing within the ruling BN coalition. The scenario changed in 2008 when the Pakatan Rakyat emerged as a serious challenger to the ruling BN and what it stands for. Now the alternative vision offered by the opposition has forced UMNO to change its course.
The only problem is if we are stuck in the old mindset that the Malays forever have to be assisted in a certain manner. I'm not saying that the Malays, 100% of them are capable of being on their own. Certain portion of the Malays need to be assisted. We must try another way of doing it, and this is why I said even the poor, can be empowered so that they can actually climb in the context of social mobility. But we must know how to do it.
But despite its lofty ideals, the opposition front, on the other hand, has its own inherent weaknesses. Made up of a loose coalition between the People's Justice Party, or PKR, the Democratic Action Party, or DAP, and the Pan-Malaysian Islamic Party, or PAS, it is often seen as a marriage of convenience between disparate parties with no common goal, aside from denting the performance of the BN. Questions remain, not just about its fragile partnership, but also of how its vision differs from that of the ruling BN. Pakistan's gloomy showing at the 2008 general election, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak has vigorously championed a One Malaysia campaign, offered as a panacea for major political and social revamp. It covers a broad spectrum of plans to create greater ethnic harmony, national unity and efficient governance.
He has quite cleverly put One Malaysia into every aspect of people's lives. So for example, there's a thing called One Malaysia Clinic, which reaches out to the poorer segments of the community, and he's giving cash grants to different segments of the community, and all of these are given out under the label One Malaysia. So you really can't separate One Najib from One Malaysia, so they're essentially the same brand. So if you look at it from that angle, yes, it has been quite successful in reaching out to the masses.
He's moving to the extent that he's so popular himself, but not necessarily UMNO. That is the worrying too, because this is not presidential election. Ours is parliamentary democracy. He has to carry the party, but he will. Even the Chinese are moving towards him a bit now. He is balancing a very delicate balancing act. You know, maintaining the Malay support, at the same time trying to win over the Chinese, the non-Malays, which is crucial.
Yet at the other extreme, a concern for Najib Razak remains the formation of groups like Perkasa, a Malay NGO which is strident and defiant in championing the Malay supremacy ideal. Najib is well aware that a sizable portion of Perkasa's estimated 300,000 members are also UMNO members. There is a tendency that his election promises of a fairer and more equitable society may merely fizzle out after the elections, and in the face of continuing non-negotiable Malay supremacy.
This is the problem. We have a Prime Minister who is also a president of a Malay-based party. I must admit that I think Datuk Najib is trying very hard, not to speak like in two different voices. I hear a lot of worries among Malay leaders that the new economic model is not going to be helping the Malays. On the other hand, he's trying to appease people. Look, don't worry. Whatever values that we have been adhering to, I'm not going to forget it just like that. But we need to move forward. I think that is the kind of message that he is trying to show to people.
On the one hand, you have a Prime Minister touting the idea about One Malaysia, harmonious ethnic relations and all that, and you have a group which is obviously, a supporter of the ruling coalition, saying these sort of things, to the extent that the partners who are the non-Malay partners in UMNO are now taking positions against Perkasa. They take issue with many of the things that Perkasa raises.
In the midst of BN's various attempts to project a changed political philosophy and a promise of better things to come, the opposition has also made headway and may even prove to be a threat at the federal level. The Pakatan Alliance has published its own manifesto, seen as focusing on a needs-based contract with the electorate. It promises a more equitable distribution of wealth, having a smaller and more efficient government and curbing corruption. The savings accrued, which is calculated to run into several billions of ringgit, would be ploughed back as handout measures to low-wage Malaysians, irrespective of race.
So they say that with needs-based policy, those who benefit from the NEP will still continue to benefit from the NEP, but those poor non-Malays will have access to government help. So in fact, even for Pakatan, they're not getting rid of the NEP, they're simply modifying the policy so that the people who are benefiting from the NEP will no longer be the Malay community, but anybody who is poor.
The Chinese may buy the so-called need-basis platform. But I don't think the Malays will buy. The Malays are enjoying the fruits of this. They are not as happy as you seem to think. But I can't see them going for this. They would rather go with the devil they know than the devil they do not know.
Whether Pakatan's needs-based stance succeeds or remains a pipe dream remains to be seen. However, in the past 5 years, the opposition has turned in a fairly good report card in the states under its control. And it is this track record which they hope to sell in the lead-up to May 5th.
I think there are stark differences between a Pakatan Rakyat's administration compared to Barisan Nasional. And the first and foremost is obviously there is no racial identity attached to policies. And selling this needs-based policy and needs-based affirmative action was a political gamble that we took. But it was generally accepted really well until today. And you don't find, for example, in Selangor, Malays complaining that Chinese got scholarships or got assistance, and vice versa. And I think the success of Pakatan Rakyat so far is to bring people together and start looking into policies away from race.
But members of the ruling BN, like former cabinet minister Shahri Samad, have challenged the perceived success of the Pakatan Rakyat's needs-based policy.
What's to their credit? Have they been able to, say, implement a needs-based policy all this while? You know, since the 5 years that they've been in government? Because the 5 years has actually given them a chance to be to implement what they want to do. And Selangor, where are the low-cost houses? Where are the programs for the poor? Right? Are you really implementing needs-based? And in Kedah, is that happening? In Kelantan, is that happening? So, I think rhetoric is one thing, right? But the real programs and projects and strategies that's been happening since Najib took over as Prime Minister shows that without even having to say it, it is being done, right? And it's being done and everybody knows.
On the next perspectives, a 2-year election campaign comes down to the wire in Malaysia, with the ruling Barisan Nasional fighting its biggest battle yet to retain power. How will the contenders tackle corruption, economic development and the contentious issue of race? Join me, Lian Pek, in Kuala Lumpur as key politicians from the different parties thrash it out on the next perspectives. Sunday, 8 p.m. on Channel News Asia.
Najib Razak has pulled out all the stops in a concerted effort over 4 years to recapture public support for the ruling coalition. Yet he remains haunted by ghosts from the past. Despite decades under several administrations, hot-button issues like corruption and racial discrimination still remain. All this in the face of rising voter expectations for a fairer and more just society suggests that it will still be an uphill task for Najib and company.
The middle ground are expecting more from Najib. There are still issues that needs to be addressed. I think the EC needs to be more proactive in addressing some of the issues. I think we have been very careful to promote One Malaysia as real One Malaysia rather than more Malay or more Bumiftra. To me, One Malaysia is not just about whatever that we are doing now. I think we should go more.
Apart from Selangor, Perak and Kedah, the focus this time will be on new battleground states like Johor, as well as the Malaysian eastern states of Sabah and Sarawak, long regarded as fixed deposit states for BN. A convincing victory over these states in the upcoming general election will help ensure a smooth passage to Putrajaya. In today's changing political landscape, these states are no longer seen as fixed deposit states, but real kingmakers, which will make or break BN's chances of forming the next government. And how both the ruling coalition and the opposition alliance push the competing visions for Malaysia may well decide the outcome of the election.
I think today, in the coming elections, that will a certain level, it will be a fight between these two types of discourses, the old way of doing things and the new way of doing things, that where race and religion is not supposed to be the main, are not supposed to be the main issues that people will talk about. They should be talking about how the country is governed, economic growth and equity as well. Meaning growth is one thing, but it should be quite inclusive, right? And I think what the Pakatan will be talking about is that despite the NEP being around for so many years, the income inequality is actually worse among the Malays, which tells you that something has been going wrong despite a system that was supposed to help the Malays.
We are already on track for a two-party system, and by two-party we mean two coalitions, and they are almost like twin coalitions, right? So because they are twin coalitions, they share the same political mobilization policies, and in a sense they even share to some extent some of their overall public policies. You know, one moves more in the direction of slightly more race-based policies, another one would move away from that and try to introduce more social welfare policies, even Islamic welfare policies. So you have two very interesting different political coalitions now, which offer a real choice to citizens.
The 2013 Malaysian elections is slated to be the most closely watched in decades, with both major coalitions promising new social contracts with the electorate. Even while the promises from both sides are greeted with skepticism, it appears that post-election, neither coalition has the capacity to deliver fully on its promises. To proffer either race-based or needs-based agendas would simply mean antagonizing sufficiently large parts of the populace, leading to even more controversy and perhaps widespread discontent.
This May, the